Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Lora O'Brien and John O'Sullivan. Fáilte. You have been lied to. Everything you think you know about St. Patrick is wrong. Every March, the same tired myths get dragged out. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland. The Druids were actually the snakes. He wiped out the Druids and single-handedly converted the entire island of Ireland to Christianity. What if I told you none of that is true? In today's video, we are sorting fact from fiction. We're going to break down the 4 biggest myths about St. Patrick and why it's time to stop giving him power over Irish paganism. So if you want to go deeper with this topic, you can join myself, Lora O'Brien and Morgan Daimler at the Irish Pagan School for our class St. Patrick, What's the Real Story? More on that later, but for now, let's get stuck in. So did Patrick drive the snakes out of Ireland? This is one of the most well-known stories. We are taught it in Ireland. So, I mean, if you're sitting in some other country thinking, oh my God, I was so silly for even believing any of this, please don't, because we are literally taught this from childhood in our Christian propaganda primary schools. So don't feel bad about believing any of these myths. As Maya Angelou says, when we know better, we do better, right? That's a misquote, but you know what I mean. So, Patrick apparently miraculously drove the snakes out of Ireland, but there's a small problem with this. Ireland hasn't had snakes since the last ice age. We just didn't have them. They didn't get here. So, the island's climate and geography have simply never supported snake populations. We have snakes on our neighbouring island of Britain, but we don't have any here on the island of Ireland. So the story of St. Patrick banishing them is just an explanation for why there were no snakes. He was given credit for crap he did not do, as, you know, has been happening with males in power for a very, 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 very long time. So something that had been true for thousands of years before he was even born, this man was given credit for or took credit for. Who knows where it actually started. So if Patrick didn't actually drive out the snakes, was this story really about something else? Myth 2 is, were the snakes a metaphor for Druids? Now, a popular theory in modern pagan circles is that the snakes in St. Patrick's story were a metaphor for the Druids, that his so-called miracle was actually wiping out the Druids. Now, this idea comes from one source, the fairy faith in Celtic countries, where a man speculates that a lake associated with St. Patrick's miracle was also where Druids were supposedly driven out. There are no earlier sources that connect St. Patrick's story to Druids, none. In the oldest versions, the snakes were just snakes. The story is a convenient way to frame Patrick as a miracle worker, not a coded reference to wiping out Ireland's pre-Christian priesthood and spiritual beliefs. So the real question then becomes, it's not whether Patrick metaphorically drove out the Druids, but whether he actually had any impact on them at all, which brings us to our next myth. Did St. Patrick wipe out the Druids? So many people believe that Patrick single-handedly destroyed the Druids and wiped out Irish paganism. But the historical record tells a very different story. Now, it is true that there are many, many stories about Patrick fighting the Druids. And often he fights them with magic that equals Druidic magic or sometimes bests it. But this is propaganda that was put out. St. Patrick basically became the superhero of Christianity when the Church up in Armagh basically decided that they were going to pluck this figure from history and give him the credit and mythologize him. So there are definitely stories that were written, but it's like Tales of Marvel superheroes. You know, you can enjoy the story, but you don't necessarily give credit to its veracity or truthfulness. So the Druids in Ireland survived well beyond Patrick's time, like well beyond. Irish law tracks from the 7th and 8th centuries, so that's the 600s and 700s Common Era, still mention Druids, although their role had shifted. And even into some of the Druidic roles and functions lasted even into the 16th and 17th centuries here. Again, the roles had shifted, but the functions that they were playing within society, some of them, continued long, long after St. Patrick was gone from our shores. So, an 8th century hymn even asked for God's protection against the magic of women, blacksmiths, and druids. If Patrick had truly eradicated them, why were people still worried about druidic magic centuries later? It's a puzzle, right? The reality is that Christianity did change Irish society. Nobody is questioning that. But it was a very slow cultural shift. It was often created this syncretic blend of what we call now the living traditions of Irish paganism here in Ireland, on the island, where the magic and the spirituality just shifted from paganism into a very loose form of Christianity in some ways, such as folk magic about the cure, holy wells, all of this kind of thing. That's all there. So again, Christianity did change Irish society, but not in some magic flashbang way, and nothing to do with one man defeating the Druids. So, myth 4, we come to. Did Patrick single-handedly convert all of Ireland? That's a very dramatic claim. Again, it doesn't fit with the history. But the idea that Patrick personally converted the entire island to Christianity is definitely not true. He was just one of many missionaries that were sent here, and he may not have even been very successful, actually, according to the records that we do have, the actual historical records. So Patrick himself, in his Confessio, admits that he faced a lot of pushback and wasn't sure if he'd had much impact at all on the Gaelic chiefs and the Gaelic culture here in Ireland, which was still part of the native Irish pagan spirituality. He wasn't even the first Christian missionary in Ireland. Palladius, Bishop Palladius, came before him and likely had more influence. So when Patrick arrived, there were tiny pockets of Christianity. There was definitely monastic cells. There were a few little enclaves of Christianity around the island, and one or two, or a couple at least, it's hard to say definitively, but a couple of lords, chiefs, local kings, tribes may have been converted, again, by Palladius, by having Christian monks living in their vicinity, all of these things. So again, it was this slow push into Ireland. And actual conversion took centuries and happened through gradual cultural change, not by force. So regardless of how many stories you're going to hear about St. Patrick battling the Druids, that wasn't what changed. That's not how cultures change. That's not how it happens. I mean, unless there's an invading militia, it can happen quite suddenly at that point, but that definitely didn't happen here. Excuse me. So Patrick became the face of conversion because of later Christian PR, not because of anything he actually did in his own lifetime. Again, he was mythologized and made into this superhero Christian missionary, which he absolutely did not deserve. So why does this matter? Why am I making a video about this here from the Irish Pagan School HQ? For many modern pagans, Patrick has become a kind of a cartoon villain. So the destroyer of Irish paganism, the man who ruined everything. And that's giving him way more power than he ever actually had. Irish paganism never fully disappeared. Elements of our pre-Christian belief have survived, have been adapted, and evolved within Irish culture. And that's part of these living traditions. And if you want to take a look at that, we have a class at the Irish Pagan School called Irish Paganism Living Traditions, funnily enough, which you can go and check out. I'll put a link to that below. But Patrick's legend is Christian PR. It's public relations. It's not actually history. And, you know, as a pagan and a historian and a native Irish practitioner of contemporary paganism, I have a lot of problems with all of this, you know. by focusing so much on St. Patrick, we buy into this Christian narrative that isn't even true, but it's giving so much power and so much credibility and so much credence and putting us in this pseudo victim mentality as modern contemporary paganisms that is just not accurate. I mean, there are genuine things that we are dealing with, genuine prejudices, genuine problems that we are dealing with in contemporary paganism. But St. Patrick is not fucking one of them. Sorry, cursing, but he's absolutely not one of them. So we just need to drop that, really. Maybe it's time to take our power back. Instead of feeding energy into a false version of Patrick, I mean, we believe in energy, we believe in our will creating change. You know, if you're anyway magically inclined, that is a core tenet of what we believe in. And spiritually, then, you know, energy matters, energy shifts, energy creates. So by feeding this energy into this false version of Patrick, we are giving him so much power that he doesn't deserve. So let's celebrate the resilience of Irish paganism instead. The fact that we're still here, the fact that here in Ireland, we do have a lot of Irish pagan living traditions that are still a part of our culture, that are still a part of our heritage, that we do our damnedest to share here on the Irish Pagan School YouTube, on our podcast, on our blog, through our classes and courses, through all the free resources we offer. If you go to irishpagan.school/free, you can literally study with us for a year of completely authentic resources. And of course, as more content is added, you're probably getting closer to 2 years now, depending on how quick you want to work through it, right? But you could definitely like take a 1 to 2 year program with us completely free with all the resources that we provide. We're still here. We're still doing this in Ireland, and St. Patrick has fuck all to do with it. So if this has sparked something in you, if you want the full detailed truth about St. Patrick and Irish pagan history, you can join me and fellow author Morgan Daimler for our class St. Patrick, What's the Real Story at the Irish Pagan School. And you'll get a very deep dive into the real historical sources and a breakdown of the Christian propaganda versus actual history. And you get me and Morgan Daimler bopping off each other as we do, which is always fun. So you'll find all the details for that below. I will link that, the Irish Paganism Living Tradition class, and the link to the free resources. I'll link all of those below. So with that, until next time, slán go fóill, don't believe the hype. Let's just make sure that our paganism is historically accurate and we're not giving people fuel to burn us with. Okay? Slán. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.